Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond, Kizito, your host. On Spectrum tonight, the quest for cohesion in Uganda. Ugandan youth say the country is getting more divided. What are their concerns and proposals to reverse this situation? Several Ugandan youth leaders today converged at the Imperial Royal Hotel, together with some opinion and civic leaders, to discuss issues that affect this country today and what role they can play in nation building. During the deliberations, many youth expressed concern about the disunity that is growing in Uganda, saying that many people now prefer to identify themselves with their respective regions, religion, and tribe, as opposed to looking at themselves as Ugandans with a common cause. This, they say, has been caused by a number of reasons that need to be urgently addressed, warning that the country is heading in the wrong direction, looking at how it is structured and being managed today. They have resolved to carry out a national drive dubbed We Are For Uganda campaign, amplifying youth voices for national cohesion, through which they intend to mobilize fellow youth and Ugandans at large to take note of the challenges that are ahead and address them immediately. They say that as Uganda marks 50 years of independence, there is a need to address all the injustices that exist, including nepotism, corruption, poverty, political intolerance, but to mention but a few. So tonight we host a team of youth leaders to try and understand their fears and how they want the issues they are raising addressed to make this country better. Our guests tonight, Mr. Emmanuel Kitamirike, Executive Director of the Uganda Youth Network. You're most welcome, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Ms. Isabella Akiteng from the Youth Greenlight Movement. You're most welcome, Isabella.
Thank you very much.
Our third guest is Mr. Ahamed Hadji, Team Leader, African Youth Development League. You're most welcome, Ahamed.
Thank you very much. Good evening, our listeners.
Ahmed, could you outline for us some of your concerns that you're raising now?
Thank you very much, moderator, for this excellent time that you've given us. I think one of the issues that we're trying to look out here is to try to reignite the debate about so many of these issues that have taken our country to a particular direction that we as young people feel is not right. Just to take you through our history, the colonial masters came in and dissected our country into components, tribal identities. As you remember that these sort of components were united. You had societies, you had segments of population that were one. They coexisted and they thrived to redefine our values, our norms, and most importantly, our history was rich. But the post-election or post-colonial sort of phase, you get to see a breed of leaders that come in and, of course, diversity-wise, and try to take an advantage of our diversity in different areas. You get to see during the Obote regime, around 60s, of course, a particular tribe tends to segment the other, and when it comes to deliberations, opportunities, resources are channeled the other way around. So for someone to value diversity towards that particular direction, we felt that was putting our country into a turmoil in terms of divisive kind of segments, which was not really good. So the whole issue is it's not all about them getting to realize that it's important for us to mobilize, to sort of bring us our ideas together, our thoughts together towards issues of commonalities, issues that define us as a component, as a country, trying to look at what can we do for our country. Unfortunately, the sentiments and the discussions that have carried on to our generation sort of look at ourselves. People pay loyalty to tribes than viewing ourselves as Ugandans. So we tend to deconstruct these kind of sentiments, unfortunately.
All right. Well, you say the colonialists dissected us. We had tribes before. Some people will say now we have Uganda as a nation. Maybe they were trying to bring us together instead.
Well, I think I would say yes or no, because in the centuries before, our our founding fathers of this nation would tell you that initially tribes coexisted, and they built the foundation of the Uganda that we were seeing today, our country, our future, that many would really, pride of. I mean, they existed at the time, but unfortunately, getting to utilize these different social, dissections in a negative way is where it gets wrong. Assuming, for example, that someone takes a post of leadership or a position of leadership in society, one tends to favor those in a particular social component as opposed to his. Then there are always social or negative narratives or sentiments that are given because you're coming from this side, then you're described with your nose. To me, I think that's where the debate gets wrong. You're getting to deny people, but the mere fact that you start defining people by their own, tribal sentiments, by their own, the negativity that is attached to the debate is denying someone the right to citizenship. You're questioning, trying to call me someone else. You reach at the point of even taking someone's life. We saw what happened during the Uganda riots here. People lost lives simply because, the negativity around the debate of diversity in a wrong way. Getting to see, young people being used, because people have their own sentiment, reasons. I think the politicians have used this as sort of their critical tool, because divide and rule. It's divide and rule. And for us, we tend to recollect all these ideas and sort of confront this discourse head on.
Emmanuel, is that something you'd agree with?
I actually wanted to broaden it and look at from the African perspective. That if you look at the struggles against colonial, they were grounded on a number of factors, but there were significant ones which were, one, the Europeans segregated the Africans. The Europeans made the Africans slaves. The Europeans dominated, exploited the Africans, and because of those, Africans rose up to fight against colonialism. Actually, the message in 1953 when the OOU was being made was unity and solidarity. Now we need to look at African countries 50 years down the road. How much have we done to deconstruct what the colonialists constructed when they wanted to dominate Africa? And I think as a country, as a continent, we have not given much concern to how we can reconstruct, redefine our countries, look beyond the different patches that were put together and build national cohesion. And that's where we are coming in. We are saying, I think as a country, as a continent, 50 years down independence, we have not done so much to develop, to come together as one social entity, and that's why we are engaging into this campaign. All
right, one of your first victims is the colonialists. How much negative credit, so to speak, would you give to the current politicians? To what extent have they helped this kind of dissection?
They have actually entrenched what the colonialists began. If you look at what's happening, for instance, in this country, is that we are more divided than we were 50 years down the road. Every small ethnic group is saying we are marginalized. We want our own. That's why you're saying so many districts. That's why you're saying government is now recognizing chiefdoms like the Banyara and ABCD, because we have not gone beyond what the colonialists set up. And I think this is where the debate is. Can we begin to look at ourselves as Ugandans? Can I start looking at myself not as a Msoga or as a Mchiga or as a Muganda, but as a Ugandan?
Isabella, this is beginning to look like a class thing, the rulers versus the ruled, and those will have for a long time to come. How do you disentangle it?
Pardon?
Well, she's just given us a description that makes it look like the colonialists were here because they had to rule, they had to, to create cultural imperialism. Now the people in government try to impose themselves on the people using divide and rule as a tool.
So first and foremost, I believe in the concept of national cohesion, but I also believe in apportioning blame very well. Now the colonialists, I think we are over-blaming the colonialists, especially after 50 years.
Yes.
And what more did you expect them to do? They just drew lines, and when they came to Uganda, they drew lines in a segment that already had a vast number of tribes within that context. There were very many tribes or very many languages already being spoken. Whether the colonialists had drawn a triangle or a square or an octagon, we would still be having these problems, is all I am trying to say. So at the end of the day, we come back to what Emma was saying. How do we get ourselves out of that ditch? Because I don't think the colonialists had a lot to do with the issue of, I don't think their drawing a map had a lot to do with the disunity that we are having right now. And also, when you look at the issue of the colonialists, it's 50 years, for crying out loud. How much more time do we need to actually get out of this? 50 years, we are still crying. At the age of 50, as an adult, you wouldn't be expected to be singing this song of the colonialists, you know. But that aside, even if the colonialists had not come, the Banyoro were still fighting the Baganda, the Iteso were fighting with the Karamojong. So these fights existed long before the colonialists. At the end of the day, it's about what we put in place to embrace, again what Emma said, our patchwork heritage, to achieve national development. How do we appreciate the differences amongst ourselves without necessarily, you know, pushing across negative ideology? In terms of what Ahamed said.
All right, so you vindicate the colonialists. Let's move away from the colonialists. Let's talk about the current system. You people are arguing that the current government is politicians today are dividing the people more than they're uniting them. Briefly talk to us about that.
Okay, now again, when you talk about the politicians dividing people more than they're uniting them, you cannot blame the politicians again too much. You see, because if you look at the politicians are a product of a certain system. If you look at the universities we go to, if you look at the associations, Basoga and Sete, I don't know what, Iteso Cultural Union, and so on and so forth, and Zambogo, that is where these seeds are planted. So by the time you get someone in parliament, he's a fully grown product of tribalism, you know, of this culture that starts from a certain level. So again, you cannot blame them so much from that particular point. It's about where they come from, the environment that they have gone through, the systems they have gone through that nurture them to be just like that. If you had put them in a forest, they wouldn't be any more savage.
Ahmed, do we really have a problem of division? Is this a cover that's opening?
I think I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to disagree with Isabella. That society, in my perception, I would view society as a holistic sort of picture, and society, the current society, simply, you know, has defined the trends of event on an ethnic or on ethnic. There's a term called ethnic nationalism, where people tend to view themselves. They pay much loyalty to a particular, you know, that passion that for instance, I belong to a particular group, and they pay allegiance to that. I belong to that group before I'm a Ugandan. That's where the whole debate starts. And to me, I think society has crafted that sort of like picture that someone belongs to a particular tribe. You pay allegiance more to a tribe. So say I'm a staunch Muganda. I'm a Muganda before I'm a Ugandan, because the whole thing is that first you're supposed to be a Muganda before Ugandan, yet forgetting that the bigger picture comes in first. This sort of culture, I'm going to agree with her partly, that the cultural associations, the cultural subgroups in institutions of learning, where we all transcend as we get out of school to head on to society, pick out they pick out the reality from the bigger system. These are just layers of the bigger system. Yes. So the whole system has sort of ingrained the thinking that it's culture, that it's the divisions in terms of ethnicity that will define the opportunities, the spaces for you to express, and most importantly, the exposure you want wholesomely in society. And to me, that debate sways the young people towards a wrong direction. Diversity in good terms would benefit the nation, but you have a clique of elite, political elite, that tend to sway the massive citizens towards, a particular directions. People use it for their own benefits. It's not for the good of the nations. I mean, that's why I entirely disagree with
okay, and
before we come back.
Just before Emma gets in.
Yes.
Okay, partly I also agree with Ahamed, but I disagree with him when he throws this back to the system. You cannot say that the system has sown seeds for Uganda to be loyal to the Kabaka. That is a fallacy.
All right, let's get down to this, Ahmed. Can you put a time dimension to it? Can you draw a line saying 1967 it began to happen?
Well, I think the whole problem, like Uwe, it's very important for us to reflect the originality of the problem, the social problem. I mean, you look at a situation, for instance, when the colonial masters still were defining what sort of country we would love to see. Quite unfortunately, it's not a country that everyone would love to see 50 years after. They sort of favored a particular social group at the expense of
social group.
Yeah, I mean the tribes. When it comes to opportunities and then the leaders. 60s, early 60s, then when Obote comes and it's another direction, you take up your own and give them all opportunities and try to sideline others. So that defined the trend of leadership. Now, leadership had to thrive to that particular direction. I mean, if you look at the post, independence leaders up to, the leaders we have today, it's almost, like the same thing. Inclusiveness is not a component to define the broad-based leadership that anyone would imagine to see by the end of the day. That's where the whole point heads. And for us, we're like, let's view ourselves as Ugandans. I mean, if, for example, as Ugandans, we all say that Uganda cranes is a unifying factor.
We also have Uganda Waraji.
Unfortunately, it doesn't bind Ahmed. But the whole point is, can't we identify areas where we all Ugandans put our differences aside, put our diversities somewhere, and look at ourselves as Ugandans? To me, that is where the debate has to begin, because that particular debate will define where we are now, where we're heading, and where our children, all our children will have to find this nation heading.
Emmanuel, give us a time dimension to it. Draw a line somewhere.
Before we go to the time dimension, I need to speak about the African leadership and the Ugandan leadership. When leaders come into power, the first thing they do is to entrench themselves. We have seen leaders who have come and said, I want to rule for 4 years and I will be done. After 4 years, they have asked for 5 years. After 5 years, they have asked for 2 terms. And after 2 terms, they have actually removed term limits.
Because the people need them.
Now, that means that we have Ugandans or Africans who forget the moment they are swearing in the values that they had before that. Now, as Ugandans, how do we open up the debate to start talking about these issues? How do we talk about, for instance, the way resources in this country are being distributed? Power. Who holds the power in this country? So at the end of the day, the leader is going to ring-fence himself so that he stays in power much more than you expect him. And I think this is the debate, because these are issues that will lead into disunity and perhaps what happened in Rwanda. Until we have a sober debate as Ugandans, what do we want? What leaders do we want? What are the values that we are looking at? And how do we move forward? That's when we'll be able to reconstruct and redefine the Uganda we need in the next 50 years.
This is looking like a generic debate. For as long as you're poor, you say, if you ask me my tribe, I'll tell you my tribe is probably something very different. I'm probably a journalist by tribe. In the West, that's how people think. Their tribes are their social, social identifications, not the language that you speak or where you're born. Is this not a function of poverty? If you're poor, then you lie with your tribe.
Well, unfortunately, the context differ. The Western definition of how they tend to look
they bring back the word tribe, but it's more of a social, inclination.
Yeah, certainly, because you need to, you belong to a particular, you agree with the norms, the values, the totems, and
if you work in Silicon Valley, that's your tribe, basically. Inventors, entrepreneurs.
Well, but when it comes to the Ugandan context, and I believe, the whole African context, people view tribes as suddenly, what would I say, that the nursery beds of their lives, where the whole definition of where I come from begins.
Well, it's probably functional power. That's all that you have. So you hang to it. You hold on to it. It's
but
like
Edmond, are you aware that tribe now defines those who have and those who have not in this country?
Go on.
Are you aware about that?
Go on, explain that.
Can we now start that debate that why is tribe defining the haves and the have not, and how is this detrimental to national cohesion?
What's your analysis there? How do you explain it?
That's what I'm saying, that if you look at what's happening in this country, you realize that resources are in the hands of the minority.
Yes.
How do we share resources as a country? How do we ensure that oil money that is coming benefits every Ugandan? And that's the debate. Doesn't benefit where it's coming from in Western Uganda.
Yes.
But even someone in Karamoja benefits from the oil wealth. We don't have that debate in this country.
Yes.
We are keeping shy. We are quiet about issues that are going to redefine what this country will be in the next 50 years.
And you don't think it's a function of security? People trust their tribes mates more than they trust other people.
We need to move beyond that ring fencing based on tribe, and that's the question we are in today.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1 listeners. Tonight, the quest for cohesion in Uganda. Ugandan youth say the country is getting more divided. What are their concerns and proposals to reverse the situation? I'll go for a break. We'll be back.
Special fares to the US, London, China, and India, with extra baggage allowance on selected flights. To book your flight, contact your local travel agent or call us on 041-7800-900 or book online at qatarairways.com/UG. Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
Terms and conditions apply.
When Junior lost his appetite, his mother tried all methods to get him to eat. She tried scary stories.
Eat, Tommy, eat, or the big black elephant will come and eat all your food.
She tried magic.
Tommy, if you eat your food, I will turn this handkerchief into sweets. Look, bumble, bumble, boom, boom.
Then she discovered Apetol multivitamin syrup with lysine.
Mommy, I finished all the food. I am number 1.
Apetol multivitamin with lysine is helping mothers to turn mealtime frustration to a fun moment. Apetol has a great taste and contains lysine, which quickly improves your child's appetite and supports healthy growth. Apetol, health for life.
Ça va, hello. My name is Kogole Andemina, very serious Congolese tailor. People see me when they want to look good. People leave my shop looking like superstars of TV. But however much I make you look beautiful or even sexy like me, I cannot change the person inside, the real you. Kind of like Uganda Waraji. It has this beautiful look, but inside they have maintained the same old spirit that we know. The same old spirit we have known for many years in a new suit. New look. Oh, you need to try it.
Enjoy the new look Uganda Waraji. The same Ugandan spirit with a new look. Uganda Waraji. Same spirit, new look.
Uganda Waraji.
Excessive consumption of alcohol is harmful to your health. Not for sale to persons under 18 years. Please drink responsibly.
Accept no substitutes.
Radio 1, FM 90.
Welcome back to Spectrum. Tonight, the quest for cohesion in Uganda. Ugandan youth say the country is getting more divided. What are their concerns and proposals to reverse this situation? Our guests tonight, Mr. Emmanuel Kitamirike, Executive Director of the Uganda Youth Network, Miss Isabella Akiteng from the Youth Green Light Movement, and Ahamed Hadji, Team Leader, African Youth Development Link. You two will be able to contribute to this discussion when we come back. Isabella, to what extent has the NRM helped destroy this division? So, otherwise.
That's a very special question. I hope I don't get picked up. But at the end of the day, I think I will get home safely. Okay. The NRM has had its fair share in advancing this unity, because if you look, for example, at jobs, if you look at the army promotions, I was listening to Felix Kulaije the other day, and he was giving reasons as to why Uganda are not part of the army. He said that they love money so much, but is that reason enough? If you look at the promotions that are taking place, don't they seem to have names for only a particular segment? When you look at programs, why is it that certain programs are not monitored? Why is it that NADS is failing? Is it because it's on this other side of the map? Why is it that NUSAF has challenges? Is it because it's on this other side of the map? When you come down to the health sector, we had the Rinda pest attack sometime back in the West. There was they cordoned it off. When we had nodding disease, no one paid attention. So at the end of the day, you begin to ask questions and keep saying, if it had happened on this side, would it have been addressed faster? And yet on this side it wasn't addressed faster. So at the end of the day, I would say that to a large extent they have advanced.
They fanned the fire of divisions.
They have just been, fanning the fire and blowing it more and more to just ensure that all this takes place. And it's not helped by the creation of new districts, you see, because if you look at the original
new districts, every tribal district.
Yes, because it wasn't a situation. Because I was talking about, for example, the issue of tribal associations at the universities. When you get new districts, now it has moved away from the tribe. It is now a district association. So now it gets away from a region and it's now at a tribal level. And everyone is saying, I am this. Sooner or later it's going to become a clan affair, then it will become a family affair, then I don't know where it will go. And the government doesn't seem to be seeing this, yet it ought to be seeing some of these things.
Is that something that go on?
Today there was a new study released by Afrobarometer. I think last week we were talking about it. 75% of Ugandans think the country is heading in the wrong direction. And why do Ugandans think so?
74%.
74%. One of them is that there is shrinking space for civil society participation. Freedom of speech, freedom of association, criminalizing civic actions of Ugandans, like banning FOC, politics of patronage. We know all the brown envelopes that go around every time the president moves around, and this is the biggest problem we have. If as a head of state you think you will govern by giving people favors, yet you're supposed to deliver services to everyone irrespective of tribe, class and ABCD, then you're going in the wrong direction. So these things that have been happening, the way police handles civic actions, these are issues of national concern, and if we don't address them, if we don't start talking about them, if we don't redefine where we want to go as a country, they are detrimental to our being.
And do you think the president gives out envelopes, brown or blue or white maybe? Does he give them out on the basis of tribe?
Not really, but by the fact that as a head of state, you are about
to leave a father, he has to even out the difference.
That's not what he's supposed to be doing.
He has been limited to a little God on earth.
I mean, as a head of state, you're not supposed to be giving out envelopes. You have a government in place. If it is about a service, can we have the respective institutions do their mandates? You don't do that as a head of state.
Ahamed,
you're actually putting yourself to a very low level as a head of state.
Edmond, let's defend the envelopes.
Yes, certainly. I want to be a little. Mine is another issue. You earlier on posed the question to Isabella whether the ruling government has played a role in dividing us more.
Division.
I belong to a school of thought that subscribe to the idea of opportunities in society or matters to do with leadership must sign up to areas of meritocracy, must define to that, because if for instance you want to say that you're giving a portion of resource to a particular segment of tribe, then you're dissecting this nation more. You're entrenching an idea that you need to belong to a particular social group for you to have opportunities, and to me I think I totally disagree with that kind of line of thinking. The best the system must really look at in terms of opportunities to focus much more on inclusiveness. You need to have an inclusive best strategy how you manage a particular country or nation or society. But if you say that you're going to because I'm Uganda, because the Banyoro want this, you give them this, because these people want this, then you're creating that mindset within these people, and the narratives in society will be, will entirely be embedded with divisive. People will be looking at them that we want this because we belong to this particular. But if you say that meritocracy, if you say that inclusiveness, let these two binding factors determine whoever. If you want to go for opportunities, if society must thrive, let these two binding factors define where the society is heading.
And Hadji, I totally agree with you. Merit should count in all of this. But where is merit in this system? Where is merit in this big balloon? In history, no, not. I was born in Mulago Hospital. But when you look at our past, there was a point in time where we had regional hospitals that dealt with specialties, which meant that whether you were from the west, the north, the south, and you had leprosy, you went to Teso.
Yes.
And you see that bound the people, because people were moving, and the government had no choice but to invest in every different hospital, because the hospitals addressed the whole country. Before you get in, Hadji, also we had the system of bursaries at that time, where the government gave bursaries to students. They're not there. Well, that's another debate for another day. But we had bursaries, and the government gave you a bursary, and attached to that bursary was a transport ticket, which meant that even if you were from as far as Lamore and you wanted to go and study in Entire, you got there safely. Now it is such systems and structures that promote cohesion. It is such systems and structures that would bring the merit you're talking about. But for as long as there is unequal distribution, that is not going to happen. It is not.
Does the lack of a national language contribute to this?
Partly, because
embracing our patchwork heritage.
Yeah, because
patchwork heritage. What do you mean?
Oh,
that is a national language.
We are very many. Who are you? We not trying to impose on the people of Uganda.
Speak actually.
As soon as you do that, there are certain issues to put into consideration. Today we are discussing the time that Luganda was suggested as a national language, and the people who are most against it were the Baganda, because they didn't want their secrets to be known. So you begin to ask yourself if the actual with the same theory.
But
the whole thing, just to take on, we need to, as the young optimistic generation, we need not to engage, in picking out all these sorts of cracks that have been thrown on us. I mean, the whole point, we should not be seen to be, promoting the ideal that because you belong to a particular tribe, then you need to be favored. The whole point is, squarely, we need to be looking at ourselves thriving inclusively. Let merit play its own role, but it all goes back to our leaders, to the state of our leaders who look at diversity as an entry point for them to thrive. I mean, if our leaders would be looking at pushing Uganda for Ugandans, but not pushing Uganda for a small segment of Uganda, as the young generation, we need to be seeing. Let's try to collect conversations that put us together, mobilize ourselves, agonize to the point where we're heading. Where are we heading? Yeah, certainly, because I'm an Arsenal fan, or I'm a Chelsea fan. I mean, we're all in one. When Uganda Cranes were playing, we were all behind Uganda Cranes. So our leaders must be looking at identifying an entry point that take us as one. If it means distribution of resources, we need to be distributed as one in terms of, if you're putting here food, let all kids have a stake into the system. We need to do that. You make it our responsibility.
Feeding certain children.
That was an analogy. That was an analogy. Yeah, I was trying to give an example, but the whole point is, let us not condemn the system, but let the debate focus on providing an alternative. How best should we approach this problem?
All right, that's a question I'd like to put to you, Isabella. How would you describe a panacea if you're given the chance? How would you begin to heal this?
I would begin by amending the constitution.
And what?
Go on.
Amend the constitution.
Yes. To read, what would you want it to read like?
That is okay. One of the things I would do is reduce the powers of the president so that he can stop being a little god, because I think that is where he does not directly feed into the disunity, but because of the too much power that he has in his hand.
How does that feed the divisions?
Pardon?
How does that feed tribal divisions?
The brown envelope.
Okay, here is the thing. He practically appoints every major office in this country.
What's wrong with that?
Right? Which means that at the end of the day, everyone in that major office is not paying allegiance to the people, but paying allegiance to the person who feeds him. You are not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Okay? And at the end of the day, if you look at appointments, we all appoint people we trust. And the first people we trust are normally family. So by default, tribalism comes into play.
Talk to us about this campaign that you're doing. How do you want to go about it?
I think before I go to that, let me just say that one, at 50 years, we need to have a discussion of what Uganda we want as young people.
In national conference?
No, I'm coming to that.
Go on.
We need to mobilize young people to help ourselves redefine which Uganda we want, and that can be done by beginning with narratives. What do you think about this country at 50 years?
Yes.
And where do we want this country to go in the next 50 years? We've not had that debate.
We need a national conference. That's what you're talking about.
It's not the national conference. It's about...
National conference has become our song.
Yes, it's about moving to every young person in this country.
The patriotism debate.
More than patriotism. Why? Patriotism was a good...
That is a Duskin state. Also,
yes, but the way
it became bad.
Exactly. The way patriotism was implemented was ideological, NRM ideological. We want to have a sober debate outside of patriotism, outside of the president's office as young people, and say, what is the Uganda we want? And for me, we need to look at the whole thing of the political system, the political era, the political leadership in this country. We need to have a new political leadership that has values.
New political leadership. You're getting very political.
No, I certainly agree, and I wish to say that the problems of the day would not be solved by merely speeches and conversations in our boardrooms or in our hotels. It has to go out there. If you walked out of this radio station, Radio 1, and just engaged a few border people, what matters to do with national cohesion, tribes, you would fear. You would fear. I mean, people are even harassing their colleagues out there, and to me, these are young people.
Yes.
The whole point is we need to focus this debate in getting to identify the prominence of the stories out there on the street with the many numbers. I mean, try to listen to them, and I think if our leaders tone down a bit,
it's a national conference.
Yeah, it's a national conference. I mean, hold on. The problems in the Arab Spring. I mean, the Arab Spring. The problems in those countries. Certainly, it's not all about. It's the conversations that are redefining society, that are setting a new order. The whole point is, I'm not calling on the young people to really head on the streets.
No.
But the whole point is, we need to take this conversation to the Ugandans, and let the Ugandans themselves air out all their sentiments, and let them decide on what best model they deem necessary to put us as one. And actually, in Uganda, let us sit together in a round pot and discuss matters of concern as Ugandans, not a conference. And listen to the Ugandans what they want. And as young people, that is the whole point where we're supposed to start.
Before we got the listeners, the whole reason why we're here is also to challenge you, the media. Can the media start amplifying these voices? Can the media start building cohesion more than just reporting on politics?
Can you have the little people of Uganda?
You can call in now. This is Spectrum Radio, and our number 0414 348 111 0312 260 390 0312 261 390. Talk to us. What do you think ails this country? Is it pride? Yes?
This is Moses in Luero.
Yes, Moses.
Yeah, I think for me,
Moses in Luero. Spectrum, hello. Yes, sir, your name?
Yes, just to
Your name?
One is
All right, Spectrum, hello. Good evening, your name? All right, Spectrum, hello. Hello. All right, that seems to be a bad line. All right, Spectrum, hello. Yes, sir. Your name? Good evening. Your name? Yes. All right, let's take our final caller for tonight. Spectrum, hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, your name? Yes. Let's get right back to the studio, Ahmed.
Yeah, I certainly agree with the last caller who emphasizes a point that this country should not head to the direction that Kenya took in 2007. I entirely agree. And it all goes back to the issue of getting to understand what are those social underlying issues, the conversations that we feel that we need to sweep under the carpet when it comes to opportunities, when it comes to people's definition of who they are, not to view themselves as merely belonging to a particular tribe, but try to acknowledge the fact that we're all Ugandans and we have a stake and we have a responsibility to view ourselves as the great contributors of the bigger Uganda. I entirely agree with that. But it all goes back to the issue of getting to understand that the leaders are trusted to represent. They are trusted. They are custodians, but the bosses are the citizens. So and they run the system. Certainly, they run the system in consultation. They get the powers from the citizens. So if they are seen to be taking an advantage of or exploiting the differences that the system creates for their own gains, I think they need to be recalled to act. And it all goes back to citizen responsibility by allowing these conversations to take place in the comfort areas of the streets, in the villages, wherever the young people are, so that we can get to appreciate that this is a challenge and try to construct the Uganda that we want to see. Why is it that when we're young in those kindergartens, we play as one, we sing Baby Jesus, we sing all these songs, and we're not looking at yourselves as why you're Muganda, you're so and so, or you have a big nose, but we are one, we play together.
Or small one.
I mean, why is it that this whole thing, surfaces as we get out there, as we grow wiser, as we get out there to trek for survival, as we get out there to trek for opportunities? Why? So I think the questions of the day must be defined by the young people themselves. What sort of picture of a Uganda that you want to see? And it takes courage, it takes conviction, it takes commitment, and it takes a strong character of a young person getting to appreciate and view the other person as a normal human being. I mean, a human being, for instance, who goes to the toilet, who has blood, at the expense of not looking at me as a Muganda. To me, I think there will be the great crafters of the nation that we want to see come the next 50 years.
Emmanuel?
Mr. Wele says Mr. Museveni has sacrificed for this country. I think we should also all accept what the president has done for this country, but has been talking about this several times, that there's a time for you to do something and a time for you to live. We have had great leaders in this world who have done great things, and time has come for them to live. What I want to say is, can we open up that debate in NRM? We don't want the president to say the NRM party is going to decide. What is your view as Mr. Museveni on succession? Tell people whether you're going to stand or you're not going to stand. You can't claim to say NRM party is going to decide. You are a person who can decide for yourself. Thank you.
So you should say he's not coming back, or you should say another 10 years, another 10 years.
Exactly, so that we know ahead of time.
Isabella.
We had 6 callers. They've addressed two of the callers. Moses talked about the leadership code, and I think it goes back to the issue of the power that has been put in the president's hands being checked. And so I totally agree with him. On the issue of the anonymous caller, the second caller who did not leave his name, I think you got me wrong. I was not attacking the army for the way they do their things, although yes, there are a few questions here and there. I was just giving you what I heard from the army spokesman while he was on TV the other day. For Alfred, we are definitely going to the ground. We have this program, we launched it today, and it will definitely go to the ground, and if you're at the ground, we will definitely meet you. For Mohammed, the Baganda not being well promoted in the army, I wish you had listened to that show, because the spokesman, I hope he doesn't have any problem with me saying it, said that they recruited 48 Baganda who all fled the army. He doesn't know where they are. Probably the army is just not the place for them. Probably it's not the place for them.
It's also like that there are no opportunities for them.
Maybe there are no opportunities, because apparently they got loans and disappeared.
Maybe they don't
But I know I don't think I'll have an opportunity to talk again, but to all the listeners out there, at the end of the day, the issue of unity is about our country. It is beyond us, it is beyond our tribes, it is about where this country is going, it's about our future. We are marking 50 years of independence this year. Can we try and ensure that we have a better 50 years? Can we celebrate 2062 without talking about tribal divisions? But one thing they need to know, that this is about them making a choice to move away from the tribal unit and concentrate on the country, and it's about them acting at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear guest. Emmanuel, Kitamirike, Executive Director of the Uganda Youth Network. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Spectrum. Miss Isabella Akiteng from the Youth Green Light Movement. Thank you for coming to Spectrum. Mr. Ahamed Hadji, Team Leader, African Youth Development Link. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito. Spectrum, we'll be back tomorrow. Up next is the news in English. So stay tuned.
Let the sunlight in.
Good morning, sunshine.